Good evening, Connectional family, and those of you who are faithful viewers of TCR Dialogues. I'm grateful for another opportunity to share in this virtual space with you all. And since I can't see you, I invite all of you to let us know where you're joining us from, what district or state you're tuning in from, so we know who is in the room with us. Drop us a note with your name and where you're joining us from. You're also invited to share this streaming and invite folks to watch with you for this very necessary conversation regarding reproductive choices. We have with us this evening Reverend Wilson and Reverend Katrese Kirk-McKenzie. Reverend Wilson is a 2012 graduate of the Interdenominational Theological Center in Atlanta, Georgia, where she graduated with a Master of Divinity degree with a concentration in ethics and theology. She also received her Doctor of Ministry degree in military chaplaincy at Wesley Seminary in DC in May of this year. Congratulations, new grad. And she is currently pursuing a DMin at Vanderbilt University in mental health integration for chaplain services. She's an accomplished Navy chaplain who served as the first AME chaplain and second Black woman to be stationed at the U.S. Naval Academy. So it's good to have you on, Reverend Wilson. Reverend Katrese is a graduate of Wilberforce University, where she earned a BA in Mass Communications before earning her Master of Divinity at Garrett Theological Seminary. She currently serves as pastor of St. Paul AME Church in Glencoe, Illinois. And in addition to her full-time ministry, she seeks to empower, esteem, and educate young women and girls through her role as Director of Education for Luxury Fragrance and Skincare for the U.S. at Coty Luxury. So welcome to both of you, and thank you for joining. I'll give you both an opportunity to greet the people and share a bit about the significance of this conversation for you all. Reverend Katrese, why don't you go first?
Good afternoon, everyone. I am so honored to be here to be a part of this very important, necessary, and relevant conversation today. I think as we look at the political agenda, we see that reproductive choices are on the ballot, and we're having many conversations about them. But I think that today is just so critical that we open the lens and the scope and the way in which we look at this conversation and how it impacts the lives of particularly Black women. You heard my bio, but for the last 2.5 years, I have been actively seeking to grow my family with the assistance of IVF, and that stands for in vitro fertility. And this is the assistance that many women are seeking. And when we see the ballots that come to reproductive choices and the type of conversations that are being had that may strip the rights for many people, it would impact someone like me who is seeking to grow a family. And so I'm just really honored today to have this conversation, to look at it from the lens of faith, and hopefully to open up the eyes and hearts of those who may be experiencing this, know someone who is, or will encounter someone soon. So thank you for allowing me to be a part of this conversation.
Reverend Jasmine, I think you were muted, but I am Reverend Autumn. I'm honored to take part in a much needed discussion, and to come at it from a different angle. I am not married, and I grew my family due to some medical complications. And so I'm honored to be here so that I can just share with my single sisters in ministry, my single brothers in ministry, what options are available to them should they need to go a non-traditional route. So again, thank you, and thank you to Dr. Thomas for having us on tonight.
Awesome. I appreciate both of you and the stories that you all bring to the table, the unique experiences that you all bring to this conversation. One of the things that both of you mentioned that I think is important is that, typically when we're talking about reproductive choices, the first thing that comes to everyone's mind is the hot button issue of political power over a woman's right to carry or terminate a pregnancy, which does matter, right? And is an important facet of conversation regarding reproductive choice. But today, we can broaden the scope of that conversation and talk about the right to choose one's own family makeup, however that might develop, and particularly how that might show up in faith spaces for women who are in ministry, considering that is the background for both of you. So I'll start with you, Reverend Wilson, as someone who has lived irrevocably into your reproductive choice and has created a village of love and wellness for your family in the face of many odds. And so I want you to share your journey of bringing joy into the world, and particularly the IUI process that you went through.
Thank you, Reverend Jasmine. It was not an easy choice. I literally just shared with someone earlier today. I did not want kids until I was told that I could never have them. I'd always grew up saying, "Hey, I was going to adopt." There are so many kids who need homes, and so I wanted to be one of those women who opened my homes to the children who were in a system, because I was slightly in a system in a sense. So it wasn't until I was told that I could not have kids that I said, okay, Lord, help me to make these people out to be believers. I was on a deployment in the middle of 2015 and was getting very sick and noticing changes with my body. And so the doctor that was on the deployment with me kind of said, hey, chaps, there's nothing we can do right now. Wait till you get back to the States and then pursue medical care. Well, I got here to Maryland in the summer of 2015 and immediately started medical workups. And one doctor said, hey, we think you may have a tumor somewhere. So I called a good girlfriend of mine who's a physician and say, hey, here's what they're saying, but it seems a little premature because nothing has been done to determine that. So she told me to get them to test additional labs. And when they did that, it was revealed that I had polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is also known as PCOS. It definitely attacks most women, particularly I've seen a lot of Black women who also suffer from PCOS, but for whatever reason, mine's just seemed triggered. It seemed very aggressive. So by the time I started looking at options for treatment, I was also approaching the advanced maternal age. So the doctor said to me, hey, you can save your eggs, but there's no guarantee that they'll even be viable for when you get ready to have kids. So you might want to just look at options to move forward now with trying to get pregnant. Well, I am not married. And I knew that I was an active duty chaplain. I also belong to the AME Church. I am from Alabama, the Bible Belt South. So that was a hard discussion that I had to have, particularly at the time I had it with my grandmother, who means the world to me. I had it with Bishop Reed, who was the endorser at the time, and Bishop Will DeVoe to say, hey, you all are the ones that matter the most. Here's what's going on. I have to make some decisions, and they all gave me their blessing. So I moved forward with the process of trying to conceive via intrauterine insemination, also known as IUI. I got pregnant on the first insemination, and I was pregnant and lost one baby at 8 weeks and carried a second baby to 23 weeks, and then lost my daughter, Sydney Dawn, who was stillborn at 23 gestational weeks. And so I got angry at God, couldn't figure out why, I was on this plight to motherhood, and how something so tragic and unexplained would happen. And so not giving up, just knowing what I felt I was called to do. I went for my second round of IUI July of 2017 and had a chemical pregnancy, which happens a lot when you're going through that process. And then on the third try, a month later, I got my daughter Joy, but it was a lot of in and out of the hospital, and Joy came early. So that's how I came to be. There were some rumors and speculations out there. People want to know who Joy's father was. Joy does not have a father. Even now, I have to correct people who say, will you ever talk to her about her dad? She doesn't have a dad. She has a donor. I went through Fairfax Cryobank You can do everything online. I got a chance to hear the voice of the donor online. I got a chance to read essays as to why the donor was motivated to contribute or donate his sperm so that women and families in positions such as I could move forward with their hopes of becoming a mom. So it's a lot of educating people on what to say. Joy and I do have discussions. She is now 5. We do have discussions about what families look like and how they are made up. And Joy has an amazing village, and I'm very grateful. I do have to give a shout out to Bishop and Supervisor Marla Reed. They walked me through the journey, even during the loss. They were right there every step of the way, all the way up until the point where I got Joy, and even now. And so it was amazing to have support. They helped me deal with the things that people were saying, because they were confused as to how was I still in ministry. And I had this child out of wedlock. And so they just helped me combat some of those issues and things that people had to say. But a lot of the time, it was more so about educating people on ways to go about motherhood. I've been very vocal about my journey to motherhood. I'm a part of a group with Reverend Dr. Stacy Dunn, who's out of Trinity in Chicago, and she has her own group that she's founded, Fertility for Colored Girls. It's been an educational process, and I've just taken the same resources to try to educate, again, my sisters in ministry who has said, hey, I want to be a mother. I am over a certain age. Is it possible for me? Letting them know the steps in which they need to take to even pursue motherhood. So that's a little bit about my journey.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Autumn. Firstly, for sharing your journey with us, because I know that it can be a sensitive one and a very personal one. And so we're grateful for your willingness to be vulnerable and to be open, and for the hope that you represent for so many women who may be traversing the same path that you have. And for those of you who are watching us and joining us that are not familiar with her baby girl, she is certainly living into her name as joy. Oh my goodness. A bundle of joy all the time. A gift to all of us who have had the privilege of encountering her spirit. So thank you for sharing with us tonight, and for sharing joy with us across the connection. We're grateful for the gift that you're sharing with us. Your journey was quite different, Reverend Katrese, right? Can you share some of the key moments of your journey through IVF and the support that you may have received from your family of faith on your journey?
Absolutely. First, I just want to thank Reverend Wilson for sharing her story. I was encouraged. There were, moments that I related to and nodded my head and even teared up. And I'll tell you that on this journey, I have been so grateful for those great clouds of witnesses, women who share their stories with strength, and women who are on the other side. They give me that courage to know that, to keep on going and keep on trusting God, because I truly believe that God has a family for me. For me, I got married in 2020 at the age of 38 years old. And the truth is, I had every intention of creating a life, creating a baby on my honeymoon. And that didn't happen. Very shortly after getting married, I went in for an appointment with my gynecologist. And it was, really one of those just yearly annual exams. And it was during that time of examining me that she noticed that my uterus was enlarged. And it was quite enlarged to the point that, I was measuring like I would be pregnant. And it was due to fibroids. And so it was during that season that I began to find out that I had fibroids and that I also had endometriosis. This was also during the pandemic. And so if you will recall, during the pandemic, and some of you may have related to, even some of just our common annual type of visits were delayed because of the pandemic. And so I was immediately recommended to a specialist that I couldn't get into for several months. And by the time that I got in with the specialist and they did an MRI and took a closer look at my uterus and determined the diagnosis that I just shared, it was recommended that I would begin the process of IVF. And, Reverend Wilson talked about this advanced maternal age. And, here I was 38, and it was almost like the doctor was literally flipping the calendar, excuse me, in front of me, because he's going, how old are you? When is your birthday? Yeah, we need to go in there and get these eggs right away. So there's that initial pressure right away, because I think that we're in a generation of so many women who may be getting married, may choose not to be married, choice one, may be delaying marriage for advanced degrees and experiences, or, just not deciding not to settle, which I'm a proponent for, and finding the right partner. And here all of a sudden there is this, message to you that you've waited too long, you're too old, and you may have, missed your moment. So it began a process for me in 2020 that really I didn't get to begin my first cycle until 2021. And subsequently, since that time, I have done 6 rounds of IVF, and it took many rounds to even get to the point of having a viable embryo. And I think what's challenging about fertility treatments, IVF, IUI, whatever the process that you may be going through, are those losses, those little losses along the way, because no one goes into this process not anticipating, a baby and that being the outcome. And certainly I went into this as a woman of faith and declaring and decreeing and believing that, in the first round, God, do it. And finding myself going through, loss after loss after loss, and having to navigate, through that grief, and also hold on to my faith in the midst of that grief, in the midst of that process. And it was even more isolating, again, going through this process during the pandemic. Many of those procedures that I had to go through, I went through alone. For me, it was an urgency to get the eggs first so that we could, try to create viable embryos that would then be harvested, and I would need to go through a surgery. And so in March of 22, I had a surgery to remove fibroid tumors. I had a massive tumor, 2.2 pounds in front of my uterus. And when the doctors began that surgery, it was more than they anticipated. I began to lose a lot of blood, and I had to have a blood transfusion, and they weren't able to get all of those fibroids. And I came out of that surgery asking right away, do we need to go back in? Because all I was wanting to do was to have my body be in the best condition that it could be to be able to carry. We did some other forms of therapy and treatment and was cleared to move forward. And I did an embryo transfer last year, and became pregnant with my son, and lost him very early at just almost 10 weeks. And when it comes to miscarriage, sometimes there's answers of why, and there's many more answers of that you don't, there's many more questions than there are answers, but it appeared that we actually did need to go back for those fibroids. And so I went through the process of preparing for yet another surgery. And believe it or not, though we were in 2022 going into 2023, the specialists and the doctors and hospitals were still backed up from the pandemic. So I had to wait a really, really long time in pain, advocating for myself, and in a pain that was so indescribable. And it was, a struggle, because it was almost like a chronic pain that I was dealing with every day. So I was dealing with that loss. I was dealing with that disappointment, but I was also dealing with this physical pain. And it was one of those moments that I really had to advocate for myself. And I'm so glad that I did, because as I continue to advocate, we learned that it wasn't just the fibroids, but in fact, I had a growth, a large cyst and growth on my left ovary that was the size of a walnut. And so I ended up having to have that drained. And I even had to go through a round of radiation before having surgery this past March. And so now I've gone through that surgery. I've had some time to just heal and to just give my body the moment to rest. I've spent time just in God's presence. I got a good therapist, a therapist that understood what it means to go through fertility treatments and try to balance that and keep the faith and the hope. I created a community around myself. And I'm so grateful that I have so many sisters that, as I shared my story, shared their story with me, and we began to create a group of encouragement and prayer. And I sent women wearing a necklace that says miracle. I sent this necklace to many women who were believing, and some of those miracle babies have been born, and there are more miracle babies that are on the way. And so I currently now, I'm in preparation for an embryo transfer. I'm doing a lot of holistic treatments as well as all of the drugs and hormones at the same time. But I'm so grateful for a platform like this. And when I went into the process, I didn't know that if I was going to share. It wasn't that I thought I was going to share. I was documenting with my husband for our own personal journey. And one day I found myself sharing because my first egg retrieval was on Mother's Day of 2021. And when I shared the story and posted the picture of the needles and everything that I had gone through at that point, and that was only step one as I look back over these last 2.5 years of where I am now, the number of women who reached out, some of them even with a whisper, because they felt heard and they felt seen, and they really hadn't had safe places that they could talk about this. They were going through something and they were carrying guilt and shame at the same time of trying to carry life. I'm so grateful that God has given me just the courage to share, and not sharing for, when you share these stories, you open up opportunities for judgment and opinions, but more of it has opened up the opportunity for community and safe space, because there are many women who are deciding to grow their families in many different ways, but need to know that they are not alone. So that has really been the scope of my journey thus far.
Thank you for sharing, Reverend Katrese. Both of you have shared such a remarkable experience. One that is obviously full of hopeful expectation, but also full of disappointment and unmet expectations. And so I didn't intend to go in this direction, but I think it's important to invite you all into a moment. And you shared a little bit, Reverend Katrese, but invite you both into a moment of reflection regarding what kept you grounded, what helped you maintain the hope, what keeps you fighting for what you believe is part of God's promise for you as you take these journeys. And like you both have shared, your journeys are distinctly different in terms of the process, in terms of family dynamic and what you have been up against. But there is a certain measure of sameness in the resilience that you've both had to possess. And so I want to invite you into a moment of reflection regarding just what has kept you grounded and what has helped you to maintain hope in those moments of difficulty.
It wasn't always easy to maintain hope. As Reverend Katrese was talking, and I think she's my soror, so I'll say my soror was talking, I was trying to plant my feet on my floor and check my body, do body scans, tell myself to breathe, tell myself to relax, because that's pretty much what this process is about. And what do you do when you are pulling at something called faith and hope and there's nothing there? My scripture that I tried to cling to was 1 Samuel 1, 27. For this child I prayed, and the Lord had given me the desires of my heart. That was something that I had to keep saying every day. But also when I got pregnant with Joy, because of the losses, I found myself at appointments because I went to an OB and I went to a maternal fetal specialist. So I had two providers because I was considered high risk. And I would be sitting there in appointments just saying, the joy of the Lord is my strength. What does that look like? I am weak. I've gone through bearing a child, and here I am on this journey again with people who did not, some did not understand because they were not at a place to even reflect on their own losses, or they had not experienced the loss, or they may have had an abortion and did not really connect with that pregnancy. So there were times where it was lonely. And I just had to keep saying, hey, the joy of the Lord is my strength. And so how do I embody that? How do I really let the joy of the Lord be my strength when I felt that God had failed me? How do I let the joy of the Lord be my strength when I am alone in this place of perinatal loss? And so I think it's that whole affirmation piece. If you say something long enough, you'll start to believe it. And so I just began to believe everything that I was saying to myself, and not just for me, but for the others who were in the support groups with me. I do recognize that I do have joy, um, but I am not able to have kids anymore. And so, how do I even, you know, move through life, so to speak, with knowing that I am not physically able to give my child another sibling from my own physical body, in a sense. So it's a lot of encouraging myself in the Lord. It's a lot of encouraging myself sometimes in just day to day movements of life. Uh, and so that's just kind of where I am.
Yeah, I love what you said, Sora. I too clung to First Samuel and really felt a connection to Hannah's story. And I got to tell you, I exegeted, I dissected, I went as deep as I could in that text because I had a lot of questions and things that I was struggling to understand, as I looked at the text and I clung to for this child I have prayed. In fact, my son who is in heaven, his middle name is Samuel for that reason. The son that Hannah birthed and the promise to give him back, to the Lord. But there was something that really blessed me as I looked at that text because Hannah, if you move over to that next chapter, it talks about this song that she sang and began to talk about filling her horn with the joy of the Lord. And it's just so interesting how connected we are in that because I had to literally find a get up and go song. I had to find words that I could hold on to because when you're going through fertility treatments, there's a lot of hurry up and go, and then there's a lot of stop and wait. There's good news, and then there's bad news, and how do you keep going in that? And I had to truly find a word that I could hold on to, that I believe, regardless of the test results, regardless of what people were saying, because sometimes people have really, really good intentions. But I have had so many people reach out to me and tell me that I should just adopt. You're such a good pastor to young people. You've got young people in church, and these things are true. There are many ways for us to be a mother, but I had to stand firm on what I believed, regardless of what it looked like, because sometimes people want to almost give you a surrogate option and have you choosing something less than God's promises for you. The other thing is I just had to get really real about therapy. And I think it's important. It was important for me to share with others, and particularly my congregation, that I had a therapist, that I needed to deal with the loss and not sweep it under the carpet. Lastly, for me, it would just be community. I am, just really grateful for women who came into my life that understood, who got it, women that I could cry with, women that I could pray with, women that I could lament with, people that when I just didn't have any words to say, that they weren't just reaching out to get the tea, but they were sincerely just concerned with my well-being and with me in the journey and holding faith with me that the desires of my heart would come to pass. And so, it's not easy. It's moments where it is truly a lonely journey. But for me, I had to find a song, a word that I could hold on to, that I'm still holding on to today, is I believe that I will have the desires of my heart.
Amen and ashe to both of those stories. Thank you. We're going to take a brief pause as we're coming up on the 30-minute mark to hear some words from Reverend Cooper, candidate for bishop.
And so part of what I am inviting people to do as we go in this campaign, I invite them to become a part of the Cooper experience, because you want to know that the person that would be a bishop has sufficient experience and understanding and knowledge of the denomination and its workings and its ways, that they can serve well, serve the people well, serve the denomination well, as a bishop in the church. And so I'm asking people to become a part of the Cooper experience, because I believe it is the kind of experience you can trust. You can trust me to do well, be well, and administer well as one of the bishops of the church. And so I ask you to become a part of the Cooper experience, because it is an experience you can trust.
Welcome back, family. So both of you have shared some significant parts of your journey and what it took for you all to get to the moment that you have come to. And I want to jump back into the conversation with some dialogue around the challenges and hindrances for women of color that require special attention. And if you all can point to some solutions to those challenges, particularly some challenges and hindrances to accessing the medical treatments that you all have accessed and the procedures that you all have accessed.
I'll jump in, first. I have spent a lot of time at the fertility clinic over these last few years. I've walked those hallways, I've sat in the rooms, I've had many appointments. I happen to be being treated and provided fertility care and even my women's health care at Northwestern Hospital in Chicago. And when I go up to the 24th floor, it splits like a fork. And I've been in both of those offices many times. And every time that I'm there, I look around and I take inventory. And I don't see many women who look like me. And yet, when we look at some of the statistics, we know that there are alarming rates of women of color, and specifically Black women, who are challenged reproductively, and specifically to some of the diagnoses that my sister, Reverend Wilson, and I have talked about today, from PCOS, endometriosis, to fibroids, and other conditions. And yet, when I look around the room, I realize how blessed and how privileged I am to even be in that space, being able to receive the treatment to try to create the family that I desire. It's expensive. Let me say that one more time. It's expensive. Many insurance providers don't carry it for our first 4 cycles, and we paid out of pocket. So I recognize that the access to this type of treatment is just not easily available for many women, and specifically women who look like myself. And as a result of that, I am so sensitive to it, and I'm constantly, even when I don't qualify, looking for the opportunities that are out there. There are, grants. There are even funding specifically for women of color, or women of color that may have some of these conditions that I've shared in various spaces. And so I think that's first, but I think even a backup from this is just a moment of education, because, I don't know about my sister, but there were so many things that I didn't even know about my body until I found myself in this situation. And as I began to talk about it, then I had sisters and mothers and aunties, and I'm not just talking about in my immediate family, but I am speaking to my immediate family, but even across the board in my church family or other communities that I'm in, the hair salon, the nail place, that I be having these conversations. And so many women had been suffering with this, but no one was talking about it. It was like a big secret. And so I think, part of it is like, there's the access, yes, to the treatment, but first just the education, that we open up spaces within our ministries, within our churches, within our platforms to have these type of conversations that remove the shame and the guilt, so that we can learn. As I look at where I am now, and if I knew back then, I perhaps would have, I think I would have frozen my eggs, or at least I would have liked to have been educated on it a little bit more so that I could live the life that I live. I have no regrets about my journey in relationships and professional that brought me to this space of where I am today. But, I just didn't have all the education. I just didn't have all of the information that some other women who are not Black and brown women have been privy to, and who are having these type of conversations in their families, in their communities, and most importantly, with their physicians. And the other piece of it is that once you then have the information, being an advocate for yourself. I spoke to having this cyst that was causing me so much pain and this growth that I had to have radiation for. And I kept being dismissed. I felt like the Canaanite woman. I was going to get on their nerves. I kept yelling, emailing, texting, any way that I could, get the attention of the doctor. But, so many times we just kind of say, all right, we ignore it. We live with pain. We live with disease. We feel like something's not right, but we don't really necessarily want to rock the boat. So I think that there's education. I think there's advocacy. And then I think there is just the financial support so that, women can have whatever say of their relationship, wherever they are in their lives and their journey to have the family that they desire.
I echo everything Reverend Katrese just said. The other piece is about the financial responsibility of it. I hate to use that word privilege, but my sister spoke to it. I am privileged. The military covered the biggest of my costs for my treatment. I only had to pay for the 3 vials of sperm, which cost me a little bit close to $4,000. And that came from my pocket. But other than that, the military took care of the biggest cost of it. But the other caveat is for women that are in ministry, women that are leading these churches who are bivocational. I don't know what their insurance package look like with their employers. We know that the church does not have an insurance package that will probably even support any treatment of this nature. And so the education does come in where if we're leading in pulpits, invite people into your pulpit so that they can educate our families on the issues that our bodies are having. And if a woman is having abnormal cycles, then yes, she needs to get checked out for PCOS, endometriosis, adenomyosis. There are so many issues that will interfere with fertility. You can be in good health, you can be in poor health. It is not a respecter of persons. So the education piece is so huge. And I feel like I owe it to every person who's at childbearing age to let them know what's available to them. I did not need to use the grants, but I do know that Fertility for Color Girls, they do have additional resources. And so some of our preaching on Sunday morning can sometimes pause just to invite the subject matter experts in and people who have gone through these various journeys to talk to the congregation, start some support groups up in your congregation so that we don't have to go to outside groups, but educate yourselves too on, I know that this is a real deal. We know that Black and brown women are being impacted by it. Who's in our congregation? Black and brown women. So we definitely need to make sure that we're having more and more talks about it.
Thank you both for the information you've shared. I think many of us know that it's happening in the background, but we don't create enough space to talk about it in public spaces like this one. And so that leads me right into my next question regarding from your perspectives, how we might, as a denomination, advocate for our sisters who may be struggling in some of these ways that you all have just named, and how we can begin to advocate not just for medical care for that particular reason, but medical care for all of the church's employees, the denomination's employees, so that we have the resources that we need when we run into complications and challenges that we may not have been prepared for otherwise.
We have a lot of conferences. We got a quadrennial coming up in a couple of weeks, and I know I have not looked at the agenda, right? Our WIM spaces, Dr. Erica's doing some amazing things, and maybe it's some of those platforms, right? It's like taking that bullhorn and making enough noise about it until it gets on somebody's agenda. That's how it works in politics. You got those lobbyists that hang outside those chambers until those, politicians hear what they have to say so that they can get bills in place. So it's really about just continuing to not be silent. I have been told that I'm too vocal about my journey, which made me think that I'm not loud enough. Because if I were, then the person wouldn't even have the audacity to say I was vocal about it. And my vocality is really about educating all women. Again, my sister comes from a marriage and she is having issues. But if we take a poll of our pulpits and the women who are in these leading spaces, they are not married. And unfortunately, they are the advanced maternal age. And yes, they do have aspirations of being a mom. And so it is journeying alongside them and saying, hey, do thus saith the Lord, not thus says people. And so for me, I knew what I was called to, and God willed it to happen. And so it's helping other women who feel that same way. Hey, let's get you there the right way, because of course, if something happens, and I'm just gonna say, we have people that are creeping and doing various things, and then they're gonna be talked about. The brother is not. And so if that's something that you wish to pursue, there are ways to go about having it. So open up your pulpits to people. I'm willing. My pastor's been very supportive and allowing me to have a conversation at church. And some other pastors have invited me in. So thank you, Christian Recorder, for doing this. But other people should also open up their pulpits, their churches, their businesses that service Black and brown people, to have these talks about what can we do to achieve families. The Bible does say be fruitful and multiply. Well, how do I do that if I don't have a husband or a wife or a partner to do that the right way?
Yeah, I echo everything that my sister said. And one of the things that I began to embrace over the last couple years is that in sharing my story, and not just sharing my story in a platform like this, and thank you so much, Christian Recorder, for this opportunity, but it even started with my congregation. I thought about the women who will come after me. We have more and more women who are in their 30s and 40s that are leading congregations. And a lot of, what I've experienced in these procedures and needing time off, fertility treatment is it is sensitive, very, very time sensitive. And my sister can attest to that, and some of it you can plan for it and some of it you can't plan for. You're going in for a blood draw, you're going in for an ultrasound, and you're told to add this medicine, or we're going to switch it up to this day, we're going to move that. And that is extremely stressful when you are a leader and you're organized and you're trying to plan your calendar and you're trying to be responsible for other people. And I think, one of the ways that we can just support women right now is just offering that grace. One of the things that I struggle with, and just being very transparent, is that I was struggling with the shame of just being honest with myself and having to be honest with others, that I could not keep at the same capacity that I'd been at for so long, with hormones and drugs and being tired and procedures and all of the things that I was going through physically. And I felt guilt and shame about it. And the interesting thing is that in my corporate world, there was a surround of support and encouragement and do what you need to do and take all the time that you could take. And it was a little bit more challenging in the church because, we have not laid out what that looks like. And so as I am so grateful for the opportunities that are opening up for women and leadership in our denomination, leading churches, leading ministries in various spaces, is also creating the support for that woman as she is going forth and trying to create her family, and the support that she will need when she has her family. And so for me, I'm grateful for these opportunities, because it's just my prayer that through conversations like this that my sister and I are having, that we're having conversations for the sisters and the women and the daughters and the granddaughters who are coming behind us, and that we are also having this conversation in such a way that it will normalize it, that it will not be such a big deal when a woman is going through fertility treatment, but also needs the support, the space, and the assistance to do what she needs to do while still leaning into the purpose and the commitments that God has given her.
Thank you both for your responses. We're going to take one more brief pause to hear a promotional message from Payne Seminary before we come back.
Pain has a personal touch that they add to the theological education. It's not that we just get you there and educate you and send you on your way.
It has really developed me in my expanding of my mind, my thinking process, my thought process. It really helped me to grow and how I debate, how I view things.
I'm tearing up about it now because it was a journey. It was very hard. But having those professors and those mentors and that family experience believing you, to journey with you and to know that they believe in you, I don't think you can get that somewhere else.
Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. So both of you have shared quite a bit of information regarding how we expand the conversation. And there may be some folk listening who are really listening and really attuning themselves to this dialogue for the first time and to these types of experiences for the first time, and may also be interested for the first time in accessing resources and information that can help free us theologically, intellectually, free us socially, and as sisters and siblings who are in the struggle, to help free us for supporting and engaging our sisters who are on this journey more responsibly and effectively going forward. And so if you all could just share some resources that folk can tap into, some avenues of information that folk can tap into to engage this journey more responsibly, engage this dialogue more effectively going forward.
Sorry, I didn't know if you were muting yourself. I know that you just made one that we both tapped into here in Chicago, based out of Trinity, and fertility for colored girls is an amazing resource, and I think it speaks to the experience specifically for Black and brown women. Broken Brown Egg has been one that has really been a blessing for me. And then there's another group that's called Kindness, and I really appreciate Kindness because it can help you to find, determine what is going to be the best path for you. My sisters talked about IUI, I'm going through IVF, but there are other journeys towards motherhood and helping you to discern what's going to be the best fit for you.
And the other thing is checking with your healthcare providers, seeing if they have any people in network. Sometimes these networks do have resources for their employees that are available. Checking with local hospitals and centers. One here in the DMV area, so Shady Grove is very big. Shady Grove. I'm on their email list, and I know weekly I get about 5 to 6 emails from them about something that they're doing in their clinic. So the biggest thing is checking with the provider and just checking with local hospitals who have advanced care, and particularly those that really cater to women of color. So I went through and I literally said, hey, everybody I want on my team, I want them Black. And that was the point I had to get to make sure that I had a safe delivery, and they honored that. And my doctor, Dr. Stitt, was amazing and saw me from beginning to end. So don't be afraid to name and say what you want. And the biggest thing is advocacy. It's a lot we don't know. We have many degrees. The AME Church is one of the most educated churches, denominations, and there was so much that I didn't know, even though I feel like I'm educated. And so continue to read resources, but advocate for yourself. And that's the advice I will offer. Don't be afraid to pull a sister aside who have gone through the process, if they are willing and in a space to share and journey with you, and ask them for help.
All right, family. You all got the 411 direct access to some folk who have the information necessary for you to access and have the stories necessary for you to connect. I'm grateful for all that you all have shared and the ways that you all have been open, very vulnerable with your personal stories, but also with what really is the story of many women who look like you and I. And so I'm grateful for all that you all have shared, all of the resources, and your heart and your spirit that you all have put on display for us. So thank you for sharing your time and sharing your stories with us. I saw in the chat that our boss is on. I almost ordained him just now. John Thomas has joined us, our chief editor. And so I want to welcome him into the space to give us some closing words. John?
Y'all keep ordaining me, and I keep telling y'all no. First, I just want to say we did put in the comments the 2 resources, and I gave the banner over to our tech team to show about fertility for colored girls. I just wanted to come on to tell all 3 of you, thank you. Katrese and Autumn, again, I'm calling all y'all's first names, to Reverend Kirk-McKenzie and the Reverend Dr. Wilson. You all are friends, and I've seen you both on your journeys. And when Chaplain Wilson approached me in Atlanta to do this, I said, you know what? We can make this be something big. And I'm glad that you and Reverend Kirk-McKenzie wanted to share your stories, because these stories are not unique, and particularly because you are women with a clear calling on your life, with clear proof of your ministry. People can't deny what God has put into you. And so the story of your journeys towards motherhood, I think just by knowing who you are, this story already there's some barriers already broken down, and people are going to have to hear or listen to this. And Reverend Brooks, thank you for doing this. I would simply say that your story is being heard. When I was in the comments, I saw Supervisor Reed saying that she was glad that the story is being heard, and other persons of connectional note were watching this. And I am publicly imploring and asking the Commission on Health to do more about educating persons, because I think sometimes we take a reactionary stance and we don't talk about fertility and what people who are trying to become mothers, become fathers need to have. And so I am publicly asking Drs. Mitchum and Drs. Burnett to do more about this for the Connectional Church. I am glad that you all were brave enough to share your stories. I thank God for both of you, and I pray for both of you on both of your journeys to and through motherhood. And again, thank you, Reverend Brooks, for spearheading this wonderful conversation. I turn it back over to you for the final word, since you the chief of this broadcast.
Thank you, Big Boss, Chief Editor. We appreciate you for coming on and sharing with us. It's been real, family. It's been real, and it's been real informative. So thank you, good reverends, for sharing with us. And thank you all for joining. Until next time, I'm going to be praying with you. I'm going to be praying for you. Keep your hands to the plow and hold on. Peace, everyone. I'll see y'all next time.
Thank you.